Welcome to Paru Zing's Appraisers on Purpose. In this season, we journey through the realm of technology and connect with valuation and data analysis experts who are at the forefront of industry transformation. We dive deep into how technology is redefining asset analysis, identifying trends, and enhancing professional valuation skill sets. Join us as we meet with leading minds to discuss the revolutionary intersection of technology and traditional processes with our host, real estate investor, entrepreneur, and chief appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
All right, well, welcome back. I hope your year is off and running, and for the few of you that you're still crushing your New Year's resolution. For the rest of you, I hope you're just looking forward to summertime. Well, we are once again excited and grateful to have just a fun and fascinating guest with Jeff Rauland. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, sure thing.
Well, as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention again, by the time you get done listening to this, you'll definitely want to comment on this podcast recording and make sure to like the recording because that helps get this out to more of our peers. And more importantly, be generous and share it. We've heard some fantastic feedback from a number of people literally across North America, just saying how insightful, informative, and at times hilarious the insights are that have really given them some, a little bit of peace, but more importantly, perspective, especially as this year is off to a little bit slower start than some people thought about. So with that, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Everybody wants to know, were you born this way or how did your life come to intersect the appraisal and valuation profession?
Well, they dragged me into it. So my grandfather was a home builder and from the south side of Chicago and made his way up to Lake Geneva and kind of made his way up there. That was in the Depression. And so when other people were not doing so well, he managed to do pretty well building homes for the rich and famous.
Oh, wow.
And well, not so much the famous, the rich. Okay. So my dad grew up in that business and he swore he would never be a home builder. So went off to school and my grandfather had an accident. He wasn't careful with the circular saw and managed to take off all the fingers on his right hand.
All of them or just four of them?
All four. Well, yeah, not the thumb.
Not the thumb. Yeah. Wait, okay, so he kept the thumb.
And ended his carpentry career. They did reattach, but he couldn't hold tools anymore. Oh, so they told my dad, you're going to have to give it up and come home and help out with the family. So he dropped out of college and went back to Lake Geneva. And so they were trying to figure out what to do. And he started an insurance business. And then it was my grandmother that said, there's this real estate thing. It's kind of like what your father did. Maybe we should do that. So the three of them all became realtors and they ran a small practice down there that it's still there to this day. It was just recently sold to Berkshire Hathaway, but
what was the name of it?
It was the Rauland Agency.
Okay.
And now, oh gosh, it's like three names: Berkshire Hathaway, something Rauland Realtors.
Okay, all right.
It's really long, but so they're still up there. My sister's involved in the business and doing pretty well. So anyhow, I grew up in the real estate business, when people call on my dad at 8:00 at night, the listing has gone wrong, a pipe burst, stuff like that. And I swore, just like he did, I'm never going into real estate. And I got really interested in astronomy. And so probably it's going to date me a little bit, but at the time Cosmos was really popular.
Sure.
And so I applied to Cornell so I could go take Carl Sagan's classes. Ooh. And I got waitlisted.
Oh,
and I know. So I went, and I had my heart set on Cornell, and I didn't apply to any other schools. And my parents like, you got to go to college. You're not staying at home. So I was waiting, and last minute I did get into University of Wisconsin. So I went to Madison, and I guess very long story short, I loved it. I didn't want to go anywhere else. So halfway through my first semester, I got into Cornell. And so then I got this. Yeah, I got this. It's that crossroads in your history, right? So I was like, ooh, astronomy with Carl Sagan or something else. But I really like the UW-Madison.
Yeah.
And I loved everything about it. The environment, the classes, the professors. I loved the massive school, the big, like 400 people in a class. Not everybody, but that was just for me. And so fast forward a little bit, two big career changes. One was not really career change, path change. So I had done in high school, I had done martial arts and things, and just really wanted to learn Japanese. Could not get in Japanese class to save my life. Yeah, in those days, they would give you a card, and you had to run around to each office and get your card stamped, and that got you in the class. This was a little before the internet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're talking about in college, right? I was thinking high school. I'm like, what are Japanese in high school? You're talking about college. Yeah, you got different colleges or deans, and you got to get their stamp.
Yeah. You get the stamp on your card, and you're in.
That stuff. It sucked.
Yeah, and Japanese was full. And so, but I happened to be in the East Asian language and literature department, and this guy's like, hey, you can't get into Japanese, but if you want, we only need 3 more people, and we're going to open a new section of Chinese. I was like, oh. Wow. I was like, give me 10 minutes. So I ran downstairs. I was like, anybody want to take Chinese? Because I need 2 more people for them to open the class for me. And 2 really nice people were like, a guy and his buddy were like, we'll sign up. We'll just drop the class next week. Yeah. So they run upstairs with me, and the 3 of us sign up, and I'm in Chinese. Had no plan, but that, and so anyway, I took Chinese. That led to me actually at the end of the year, so second semester, they said, we are going to Taiwan and China, and we're taking the whole trip. And I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic. I want to go.
Yeah.
Signed up. And then I thought better of it, because they said, we're going to put you all up in a college dormitory, and you're going to have a curfew. I was like, no. You're not going to go all that way just to be cooped up in a dorm room at 8:00 at night, like a kid. So I bought a ticket to Taipei.
Yes.
And that was it. I had 2 semesters of Chinese, got off the plane, managed to get on a bus and get into downtown Taipei, found a hotel, got a job, found a place to stay, and so forth. So that kind of set me on that path. Yeah. And then the astronomy classes I was taking at UW didn't work out so well, because I got through the first 2 semesters of calculus, and that was my learning. So without being able to do the advanced math, astronomy was out. So I got into my junior year, and I was like, you know what? Just on a whim, I was like, I'll take a real estate class. My dad seems to like it.
You're at UW-Madison. I mean, you couldn't pick a much stronger school to take a real estate course. I mean, unless
I signed up for Professor Grasscamp's class, and many people might not know who that is.
Tell people who that guy is.
Well, he died 2 weeks into my class.
You can still tell people who he is.
Yeah, but he's the father of feasibility analysis. Yeah, which, but yeah, he had revolutionary ideas for the time for how you should analyze real estate, and all the different ways that you could look at it and compare and all that, and really was an advanced thinker for his time. And he put, like, who would have thought a University of Wisconsin? And so Dr. Malpezzi, who's still there, took over his class. They hired him from the World Bank. Yeah. So I finished with Malpezzi. He claims he doesn't remember me, but I know he does.
Some things we'll leave in the past.
But that program started by Dr. Grasscamp and pushed by, those that came after him.
Yes.
Really, I think I'm obviously biased, but I think the University of Wisconsin is one of the greatest real estate programs out there.
It is a very impressive one, Jeff. I agree.
I mean, coincidentally, I took that one class, and at my last semester of school, I had all my credits completed, everything. I was ready to graduate. I just needed to fill time.
Yes.
And so I took what I thought would be an easy class. It was called Advanced Real Estate Finance.
Ooh.
And I should have looked at the number, because it was 701. Which is
not 401, 701.
No, 701. It was a grad school.
Master's level course.
Yes. And it was like right at the edge of my abilities to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And so I struggled with it a little bit, and went to see the professor, and he said, "Look, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal." I told him, "Look, if I get a C in this class, it's going to ruin my GPA, and I'm in my last semester. Is there anything at all I can do to just bump me up one grade?"
Yep.
And he's like, "I'll tell you what." And he did very fair. Professor Matthews, remember him forever.
Sure.
He said, "Tell you what I'll do. There's this guy, Michael Lewis, who just wrote this brand new book."
You mean Michael Lewis of famous author Michael Lewis?
Yes. He said he just wrote this new book that will revolutionize your thinking about real estate. I want you to go out and read Liar's Poker, and you write. I want you to not just this is not a book report. I want you to analyze the book and go into detail on everything. Is this possible? Is it not possible? All that. So I read this book and I was blown away by it. It's not even a long book.
No, it's
probably read it in an afternoon. And I spent more time writing, because this was my grade. So I spent more time writing my analysis of the book than I did reading the book. Wow. And so what was really interesting is I came years later, I wound up working for Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
After Louis Ranieri had left.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, get a sense of the timing.
One of the heroes of the bank.
Yep.
So I always thought that was cool. And I never dreamt I would end up in real estate, mortgage-backed securities, anything like that. So you fast forward a little more, I still was swearing. I wanted to do something with East Asian studies. So I took Chinese. I did take Japanese. Japanese, got fluent in both. Even took Chinese computer systems, so I knew how to program in Chinese.
So I apologize for my ignorant question, but we've had the privilege of working with a number of very talented university and grad students over the years that have come from China. And when you talk about programming in Chinese, so are you specifically referring to a Mandarin programming language? Or
no.
What do you mean by that?
But it's different now.
Yeah, okay.
If you go way back to DOS days,
okay, sure.
You couldn't. There's too many Chinese characters to have a code for each character.
Yes.
So the way around it was each English letter takes up 1 byte.
Yes.
1 bit. One
bit.
1 bit.
Yep.
Each Chinese character has to take up 2 bits. So you have enough codes to cover every character. And the only way you could do it was you had to have this really special piece of hardware.
Yes.
There's a card that fit in one of your card slots in your PC. And it had stored in, I forget how much memory was in it, but it would be crazy today. It was maybe like 32K. But it had every single Chinese character stored with the corresponding 2-bit code.
Yep.
And then your computer could decode, ASCII to Chinese.
Holy smokes.
And display, if you had this card, you could display Chinese in DOS. And so then if you want to, so you're essentially coding, but when you're wanting to display Chinese characters,
yes,
it's a little different.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay.
It's a really weird specialization, but at the time, China was very, very far behind the rest of the world. This was, at this time, maybe one block in Beijing would have a TV and everybody would gather around the single TV. Most people were on bicycles. That's where they were technology-wise.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much for China as it was for Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But if you want, you could get a job working for a bank, coding things so that they could, put out their checking accounts with people's names and Chinese characters or things like that. So
it's amazing.
I was kind of interested in that. And so I decided to go back to Taiwan. I'd been there 3 times already and decided, well, I'm going to go back and try to get a job there.
Sure.
And I did have one company, China Trust, told me I had gone there for an internship. And they said, look, I can't offer you a job, but I'll tell you what, after you graduate, you show up in Taipei, I have a job for you. I will find an opening, but I can't promise. You're going to have to take a leap of faith. So I did.
Yeah.
Just like the first time when I just bought a ticket and went and had no plan. I had a little bit more of a plan, but I had at least had faith. So well, I wound up working for a bank. They're kind of like the Goldman Sachs of China,
Sure.
or Taiwan.
Yes.
And now people are going to be mad at me because I called China Taiwan. But anyway, so got a job there, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do with me. And so they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put you in the pre-sales department, which is, yes. So they have a unique financing system over there.
Yeah.
They will put a model on a lot, and they're going to build a 20-story building and fill it with apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And when they've sold out, like, let's say the first 15 floors, then they start construction.
Oh, yeah.
So they have it all sold for cash before they even start laying the foundation.
Fantastic.
Yep. And then you wait. So you sign a contract today, you agree to make monthly payments, but it's not a mortgage. It's kind of like an installment sale.
Yes.
It's like it's like a layaway.
Yes.
So they promise you a house in 5 years.
Yes.
And so you make all your payments, and it's kind of an accelerated schedule then and all that. So I found out they really wanted me there to be the foreigner because it attracts attention.
Oh, yeah. Get it sold. I remember this goes back about 10 years ago, and Yao was one of our most talented students. He was getting his master's degree at a university in Illinois, and we partnered with a number of universities to provide graduate level hands-on course work and experience. And I remember explaining his dad was one of the developers for those type of properties. And he was explaining to me, and it just took me more than a few minutes. It was a little slow, obviously. I'm like, how does it work? And I'm like, what do they do? He said, of course it's changed from the time you're speaking to, Jeff, to more recent times.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. I mean, to think about being able to start a project, not just with 10% down commitment for people, but like cash for 15 floors.
And then it works out.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not a scam. They actually build it and turn it over to you, and it's all good. Yeah, until recently. But yeah. But so I was at China Trust, and it was unique cultural experience. They have a daily nap time, like 12.
I love them already. They have a daily nap time.
Yeah. So very promptly at 12 o'clock, you punch out. And they make it a white collar worker, you still punch a card and you go out and get your lunch. So my very first day of work, I punch out, I go out, I get some lunch, come back, I don't know, at 12:45 or something, and everybody's got their head down on their desk. And they're like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, I'm not late, right? I got an hour. And like, you're supposed to be back 15 minutes ago for your nap. Yeah, I was like, what? And they're like, yes, you get a half hour for lunch, and everybody takes a half hour nap. And I was like, I don't need it. I'll go back to work. And like, no, you nap. We're not. Yeah, it's required. Everybody you don't have to sleep.
I love it.
Yep, but you must be quiet and not make noise, not move for a half hour at your desk.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's other things too, but so at that time, my department shared probably 30 people, maybe more, shared 2 computers.
Oh.
And you had time, you walk over, write your name on the pad and say, I'm up from 2 to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got a little bit there, but one day I was walking downstairs, probably to go out to lunch, and happened to pass by the international real estate department.
Okay.
And this guy, they had a computer for every person. And this guy is like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And so I said, oh, can I look at it? And he was working in Lotus 123. It happened to be, like I was telling you about, one of these, an IBM PC with a green monitor, and the special card in it for Chinese characters. I was like, oh, I know my way around that. So let me look at it. And it was a cash flow analysis. And
wow.
Yep. And so just from the classes I had taken on a whim, I was like, that's all wrong. And he's like, how do you know? I said, well, for one thing, you're using remember this was RTC days?
Yes.
And everything was selling at deep discounts. Cap rates were 12%. And I was like, he's using a 4% cap rate, and nobody in California has a cap rate over 10. They're under 10. Sorry.
Sure.
I was like, your assumptions are all wrong. He's like, okay, well, let me see what you would do. All right, let me take a whack at it. So I messed with the spreadsheet a little bit, I think I took it from like 1.2 million to 600,000.
Wow.
And like, that number is wrong. I said, why is it wrong? They said, because we hired this person to represent us in California, and she would never get us to overpay to that extent.
Oh.
Yeah, no. I said, is she a real estate agent? They said, yes. It says, all real estate agents work for the seller.
Oh my God.
I said, impossible. We pay her. I said, it doesn't matter. They didn't have dual agency at the time. I said, all real estate agents are agents of the seller. They're contractually bound and legally by the regulations, the license regulations, to represent the seller's best interest, which are to get you to pay as much as possible. And so next day I go into work and like, we've moved your seat. And they moved me one floor down to the international real estate department. They said, we'd like you to rework all these spreadsheets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they started getting deals coming in. They were buying everything they could in Southern California, hotels, golf courses, shopping malls, all that. So I started in commercial, never intended to be an appraisal or analyzing real estate or anything. But that job got me another job for a local company called Investec. And they did, we represented McDonald's and Metropolitan Life, Kodak, the big international companies coming into Taipei. And so that's how I got thrown into real estate. And my girlfriend at the time, now we've been married now for, she's going to be mad, 32 years.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So she needed she needed a medical procedure that you couldn't get in Asia. They said it needs to be a research hospital in the U.S.
Sure.
So we came back here, and I got fired. They're like, don't bother to come back.
You went for a medical procedure for your son.
They tired from work, and that was not right because I was the new guy and all that. I was I was 22, like you should know better, but nobody really explained to me corporate culture and all that. So, I live and learn. And then I tried very briefly commercial real estate sales, and I found out I'm a terrible salesperson. I got plenty of listings. I couldn't sell them.
Oh my God.
So, and we shouldn't even admit that, but
that's okay.
So if a friend of mine opened an appraisal company, he had a PhD in real estate and he partnered with an MAI, and they were like, look, you got some experience. You just need a little bit more. You'd probably be a really good appraiser. So they brought me in as their second hire there.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah. And then I've never left the business since. I've tried, but keep coming back to it.
That's phenomenal. So you came back to the U.S. to support your significant other for a medical procedure, get terminated in the process after doing some revolutionary work for this lender, abrupt. And of course, you don't know what you know at the time. I mean, you could have been the character of one of Michael Lewis's books over in that region of the world, given what you were capable of doing.
Well, funny you say that. Not for being over there, but years later. So I was on my own. I went to work for a nationwide appraisal company that folded.
Yep.
That took me to WAMU. WAMU blew up, and I wound up at Goldman Sachs. While I was at Goldman Sachs, there's two characters that are in The Big Short.
Yes.
And maybe I'll leave it up to mystery, but there's two characters that I worked for they go to meet.
They're both in the book.
Yep. So I'm sure they've changed the names, but just looking at the personalities, kind of some of the things that he brings up, I was like, I know who that is.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but the interesting thing about The Big Short for me is that if you read the book, it's not in the movie, but in the book, he makes some guesses as to what was going on at Goldman Sachs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that they're wrong. They're very good guesses, but I was on the inside at the time.
Yep.
It just projections as to the motives and how they might have taken both sides of that bet. And one side was short, one side was long. And I mean, I sat at the desk where they were making those decisions, and we had the Chinese wall.
Yes.
That if you were on the selling side of a certain transaction, you weren't allowed. You might be across the partition from me in the other cubicle.
Sure.
Well, I'm not allowed. I can talk to you about the weather, but I can't talk to you about any business dealing. Certain times, like if you picked up your phone, you might have to go, oh, you're going to have to step aside, or you'd have to go in a private office and take the call.
Sure.
But so that's exactly how a lot of those things happen. And I might be naive about it, but there was one example where Goldman Sachs was simultaneously buying loans on a warehouse line.
Yes.
And representing the sale of, or brokering the sale of that company, which is no longer,
yes,
to a bigger company. And so I was working on the brokerage.
Yes.
And I had all the details of all their inner workings, what their portfolio looked like and all that. And really good friend of mine sat right across from me, and he was working on the purchase of all these loans on the warehouse line. And we couldn't talk.
Oh,
so
wow.
We could. I mean, we talked a lot, but we didn't talk about that company. So it's entirely possible that I knew things that would have entirely changed. Well, more the other way around. He might have known things about their warehouse line that I'm not even allowed to know.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm looking and getting one picture, and he's getting an entirely different picture. And all of this was heading into 2008, as it was just about to crash and burn.
Yes.
So but it was amazing to me how much Michael Lewis guessed correctly.
Well,
so,
you talk to enough people, you gain enough perspective, you do a lot more inferring than you do guessing.
Sure. And he's a smart guy. So he
does a lot of good research, writes a lot of good books too. I remember his first one when he came out, and I was just like, wow, this is a whole different, what do you call it, occupation to graduate college from. Like, who knew you could go out and write these kind of books after getting good experience?
Yep. Well, think about it. He went to be a bond trader and wound up being an author and a journalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much more accomplished than most of his peers out there. And some of them did a lot better than him, but he probably had less stress along the way.
Maybe. I've heard his latest book about Sam Bankman-Fried. I've heard he's getting a lot of grief over that.
I don't know anything about that one.
So he was interviewing him during the whole rise of
of his, it's his involvement there. The old pervert. Totally.
Well, people were like, "Why didn't you turn him in?" And he's like, "I'm a journalist. You don't do that." And he explained how he said, I don't think he knew the extent to which things were happening, but there's who was it interviewed him? Freakonomics.
Yep. Oh, not Friedman. No. Gosh, I should know their names.
They're gone from my head, but they one of the authors of Freakonomics interviewed him recently.
It's probably Levitt, wasn't it? Stephen Levitt.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I should remember.
Yes.
But Freakonomics are, by the way, like my ultimate heroes.
Those guys are phenomenal. I love their stuff.
That when that book first came out, it changed my life. That I'll tell you what, Liar's Poker.
Yep.
And Freakonomics are my two biggest books on my reading list.
Well, I mean, it gives you a sense of behavioral economics, which I didn't even know was something you could study. And then the one chapter, like, why do drug dealers live at home? And then the other one about realtors. I mean, I love that day on realtors being like, hey,
sumo
about you. The sumo wrestler. Wasn't that one of the other chapters?
Yeah. And the one ends up, or two maybe, it wind up getting assassinated as a result of the research that came out.
Yes.
So, that was, anyway, interesting stuff. So.
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, it is fascinating. I'm just going out on a limb, Jeff, but I mean, is it significantly less than 1% of university students graduate, especially from the Midwest, but across the country, and then go to another part of the world, speak a language that's not their first language, write programs for them or rewrite programs for them, and then don't stay and come back to the U.S. to become an appraiser?
It's got to be a tiny number. It's it's one of my bigger regrets when I got the news, when they said you're not coming back.
Sure.
So I went from China Trust to Investech. One of the people from Trust was like, I'm going out and starting my own real estate company. I'd really like you to come with me. And I turned him down.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could have turned right around, gone back to Taipei,
Sure.
and done that. I might still be there had I done that. But
you're probably
I was like
those guys we read about by the World Bank and the and in the development series. I mean, it'd be your name being quoted versus anybody else.
maybe. So who knows? But I guess it is what it is. I've learned a lot from WAMU.
Yeah.
That was another pivotal moment.
Yes.
When you think about all these things that change your course.
Yes.
So I was at WAMU. Things are great.
Mm-hmm.
The culture of the company was awesome.
Yes.
And then we bought Long Beach.
Oh, yeah. Long Beach. Yeah. Tell people about Long Beach that they don't know what the market positioning was.
Well, I can maybe exemplify it.
Yeah.
So my first day at WAMU, went down to pick up my computer and all that, met my new boss and all that. And he sat me down. He's like, look, when you start getting into these things, just remember, the company is not in the business of rejecting loans.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to protect the bank.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you feel like you're making a good decision that protects the bank and protects our interests, don't reject things. Don't be so tight just for the sake of, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll try to adopt that as my philosophy. And I did. Like, I would look and I was like, is there a way to work this out? The appraiser made a mistake, but can I figure out a way to live with it? And if no, yeah, it goes back. But if yes, okay, we'll write it up. We'll explain why we did something or why we made the decision. We'll send it on down the line. So that was the WAMU philosophy.
Yes.
And about 6-8 months after we had acquired Long Beach, they brought all the reviewers in, and they said, we think that you need to learn to do things more like Long Beach.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. And it was a huge culture shock. So the culture at Long Beach was everything passes.
Yeah.
There was no more protect the bank.
Nope.
It was, you better have a damn good reason if this appraisal doesn't pass.
Yep.
And even then, even if you didn't have a good reason for reject, or am I saying that backwards?
I know.
Even if you had a good reason to reject it,
yes,
you still better pass it.
Yes.
So fast forward about 6 more months, we're coming into Christmas and all that, and we get this weird conference call, and they said, we have $1 billion that we have to either re-underwrite or buy back from Fannie Mae, and it has to be done at the end of the year.
Ooh.
So yeah, they said, we're looking for volunteers. If we don't get enough, it's going to be mandatory, but we'll pay you a little extra. We'll do this, we increase your bonus, that kind of stuff. And they said, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring you into a hotel. The entire team is going to sit there in a giant, it wasn't really a banquet room. It's like for a dinner.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
A giant table and all that. Yeah. And we were. We were not allowed to leave.
No, I understand. You were sequestered.
Oh yeah, it was like being on a journey. We had a pool, we had a gym, we had fabulous meals catered in, and they said, but your job is to keep your butt in that chair and get through appraisal files as quickly as possible because we have to get through them by the end of the year. No option. Wow. And so we had to open each one up, look at it just like we were doing a review. We had our laptop with us, and you could pull up a little data and see if you believed the appraiser or not. And then we had to pile them. Like the first step was 2 piles. These are good. These are potentially bad. And then, so the good ones we could set aside and they go, okay, these are all back in the deal. We're comfortable. All the bad ones, we got to go through a second time and re-review it in detail. So then you finish phase 1 and you go on to re-review it. And what was great was it taught me to be quick and to make a decision. It's important, not important. And I think that was really valuable. And then the second part was it introduced me to the capital markets team. And so after that, I hope they thought I did a good job. Okay. I got invited back to another deal. And they're like, hey, we could use a little bit extra. You willing to work nights, weekends, get these done for us?
Oh, not
sure. They paid me nicely to do the extra hours and stuff. So it was great. Plus, I learned something, and then that's what got me to Goldman Sachs.
Are you running a real estate firm? Are you looking to grow your firm, streamline your operations, or prepare for an exit? Don't miss this opportunity to work with Michael to figure out your business pathway to massive success. With a growth system for business that leverages opportunities and removes obstacles that Michael has successfully taught to thousands of entrepreneurs globally. Michael's guidance will help turn aspirations into reality. Michael is a renowned figure in the real estate and business coaching worlds. As one of only 5 individuals worldwide for Entrepreneurs Organization, Michael serves a dual role, training business owner participants in the EO Accelerator program, while also upskilling EO members' impact and capacity to lead multi-million-dollar businesses. Get more out of your business. In working with Michael, you can achieve the growth, profitability, and life balance you desire. With Michael, it's not just about business growth. It's about redefining your purpose for business and for your life. If you are interested in working with Michael, contact him via his LinkedIn profile or email him at michaelh@paru.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode, where we explore new technology trends that will shape the world of real estate appraisal for years to come.
Of course, because that would make sense from that tie-in from, them being Alt-A lenders and, everything was passed.
When we interviewed and you were like, well, what experience do you have reviewing or doing things for capital markets? I was like, I do. So it was just perfect. Well, maybe it wasn't perfect timing. It was somewhat planned out.
Wow.
Taking advantage of things. So, and then of course, Goldman we did 3 of us. Well, one time we had 5, but mostly we had 3 of us that did around 90 trades a month.
No kidding.
And I think our average trade size was 300 million.
People just don't understand the numbers that get moved around here. I mean, and rightfully so, why would they? I mean, unless they've read a lot of Michael Lewis's books. But aside from that perspective, it's so easy for many people in and around valuation to, they're focused on that piece or that segment or that asset that that's right in front of them. And maybe that's a $200,000 asset, or maybe that's like, you're Long Beach, that's a $2 million asset, which is a low value asset out there where they concentrated. Or even if they're in other disciplines of valuation, and it's just one piece of such a bigger machine. And even a $300 million tape isn't very big.
No, not for them. It was eye-opening, though, because we did the loan purchase, loan sale, securitization. We got involved. Then once it was in the security, we had to supervise our servicers. Mm-hmm. So here I was, a year before that, I was an appraiser that just got you an appraisal report or got you a review done. Mm-hmm. Occasionally did a kickback or did a loan sale, just to prove our things were our loans were good. But once I got involved with Goldman, they sent me to, they said, we have this vision to go global with our securitization model.
Yeah.
He said, we want to take what we do in the United States and do it everywhere. So I got tasked with doing Brazil and Canada.
No way.
And I spoke a little Spanish. My Spanish is terrible, so don't even ask me to speak it.
I won't.
But
you had to speak Portuguese, which I don't even understand when I'm trying to talk Spanish.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, most people in Brazil can understand you if you speak Spanish.
And when they speak
Portuguese, can get by. After about a week there, full time, I could kind of understand it. And I made a terrible mistake. So not that bad, but so I'm learning. I'm trying to figure out, go from Spanish to Portuguese, and the phrase for thank you, obrigado, and some people say brigada and some people say brigado, and I thought, I get it. When you're speaking to a male, you say brigada. When you're speaking to a female, you say brigada.
Yes,
that's not the case. When you are male, you say brigado. When you're female, or if you're female, you say obrigado.
Now, Jeff, everybody else that doesn't speak a second language or doesn't remember this or never studied the second language, I I have to admit that I'd since forgotten that, but I've been exposed to it because of so much of my extended family. This whole like masculine, feminine concept of words is just unfamiliar in the English language. So what you're speaking to is just obvious and normal when you're part of the culture, but for foreigners, boy, you really stick your foot in it.
Well, so this concept in Portuguese, I had no idea. I just guessed what I know about Spanish. So after about 3 days there, somebody takes me aside and they're like, "Hey, you're speaking very feminine." I was like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, like men don't say that." I was like, "Oh, I get it. It's the other way around."
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many people I had, maybe potentially offended. But we had to introduce Brazil to the concept of a BPO.
Oh, fascinating.
They don't. Yeah. So we went down there thinking, well, can we get appraisals? Can we get BPOs? What can we get that's like what we get in the US? And in Brazil, they don't have appraisers. They have architects. Only an architect can do
I
an
think that's
appraisal.
the same way in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. I remember looking into that. And a gentleman that worked for me was from Mexico City.
Very similar. And they only do cost approach. There's no market approach.
Wow.
So if you're buying an apartment, let's say there's 100 apartments in a building. It's the cost of the building, the cost to replace it, divided by 100. And that's the appraisal, which is it's an interesting approach. It's actually more common. It's probably more common than the US version. But so I went down there and I'm trying to explain the concept of a broker price opinion to brokers. We're like, appraisal is not going to work. We interviewed a few architects and like, my turn time will be 3 months and my fee will be $3,000. I was like, hey, it's not going to work. Yeah. So it's like, I was thinking like 5 days and maybe $100. So we, I went around and interviewed, I don't even know how many brokers. And the conversation was always the same. I'm like, I want to hire you to price a property for me. Like, oh, so you're listing or selling? You're listing or buying? I was like, no. I don't want to list it. Like, so you're buying. I don't want to buy it. I just want to know how much it's worth. So like, why would you do that? It's worth what you paid for it. And I'm like, no, but I don't believe the person. I want to verify. And they're like, I don't get it. Why would you ever? They're like, we do this for free. Why would you pay me money? I'm like, okay, but I want to pay you and I will make this a good deal for you. I might give you 10 of these or 100 of these. I just want to pay you to do what you would do if I was going to list my property. Like, so you're listing? No.
If I did, I want to know what it's worth.
So we were able to explain it to like a handful. So like out of 50, maybe we got 4 or 5. And then the next step was we came back here and I had to figure out how to translate Portuguese to English.
Oh, wow.
So we went to a company that's now a competitor of mine, so I won't say their name, but I do respect them a lot. So I said, here's the deal. We're going to hire a Portuguese translator. We're going to prepare one version of your BPO form in English so I can read it. And we're going to have an identical version in Portuguese so they can fill it out. And they'll put it all in there. We'll figure out the rest. And, the comments, we'll have to kind of figure out how to do that, but we can leave them in Portuguese. And we did it. We did a number of trades on a bunch of whole-loan trades that I don't know whatever happened to them. I think Goldman may have securitized them. And we did the same thing in Canada, except it was easier. So in Canada, BPOs at the time were illegal. We couldn't do it. We could only do an appraisal. And they didn't back then. They didn't use the 2055. I don't know. I can't say at all, but it wasn't very common. But you can't do a 1004, or they have like a Canadian 1004, but you couldn't use that. Yeah, you can't get inside. So, well, they wouldn't call it a 1004, but anyway, a Canadian appraisal report. So we persuaded all these Canadian appraisers to do 2055s for us, and then we had kind of the same problem, but solved itself because the form was in English. And we got appraisals in French, and I had to learn how to read. I have no background in French, but I learned how to read an appraisal in French. So, and we were able to do those trades that way. And as a result, I got a curse placed on me by a French woman.
That's not good.
No, French Canadian woman.
Oh my God.
I was in LaGuardia Airport. I was talking to my friend, and a third person in our group had gone to the restroom. And so we were waiting for him, and we're talking about this project. And I said, well, I now know how to read appraisal reports in French. And he's like, oh, yeah? How do you say basement? And I said, sous-sol. He said, okay. How do you say bathroom? And I said, we're standing outside the restroom in the airport. I said, oh, it's easy. Bathroom is salle de bain. And this, for no reason, this French Canadian woman comes over and she's like, you are such an American. I was like, thank you. She goes, you don't realize that we don't call that the salle de bain. Nobody is going in there to take a shower. This is a WC.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, thank you. I understand that. Can I have my conversation, please? So, and ever since then, I've had terrible luck on airplanes.
Well, you want to tell people that don't travel a lot to certain countries what the WC is?
Oh, I mean, I knew what it was.
Well, listening,
we weren't
necessarily know that. If I didn't travel, I wouldn't know what WC stood for or even to ask for it.
Oh, no. Yeah, you see WC in Japan. I don't think they know what it stands for.
And what does it stand for? Do you know?
Yeah, water closet.
You know, where's the bathroom? No?
Yeah.
But it's such a foreign concept if you haven't been exposed to it.
Yeah, that's funny. I think the Germans call it the VC and I think even in Mexico, don't they use WC? Well, you could use baño.
Case.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's the people that have traveled with me know about the curse.
You know, it's better to travel and have the curse than not travel and not know so much more that's out there.
Yeah. Well, the good thing for me is if I travel with a friend or coworker, then the curse bounces to them.
It's good to know. So it's away from you now. So those that would choose to travel with you are not taking on your curse.
My boss, I was trying to explain the concept of this curse to him. He's like, that's BS. That doesn't happen. I was like, no, it does. You're probably going to get something. And he's like, yeah. We flew to Tampa together. We arrived in Tampa, and his bag comes off the belt, and it was shredded. It was like, yes. It's like the shell of a bag just ripped to pieces. He got stuck in some machine or something. And his clothing kept coming out like one piece at a time. I was like, I tried to warn you.
Gee.
And as a result, he never traveled with me again.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Not the typical appraisal chronicles kind of stories we hear, but nonetheless a fascinating one.
We try to keep it interesting.
That is totally the case. I mean, and that's one of the fun things about the podcast is we really do get the opportunity to connect with valuation professionals, all different walks of life. And you literally have walked across multiple continents, which is not a typical perspective that we get to hear about. And yet, as you shared, I mean, you started out just doing appraisal, and here you are doing the loan purchase, loan sales, securitization, this much bigger behemoth, if you will, that a typical person doing a single commercial loan appraisal or a single residential loan appraisal never has a sense of, but how this sense of snowballness, if you'll allow me to use that word, comes together. And there's roles like the ones you were filling that are extremely important and involve many, many, many zeros to the left of the decimal point.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but that's just it. You just divide by a factor of 1,000 and everything is normal again.
Good way to put it. It's 1,000 loans. Like, oh, okay, well, it's just 1,000 loans. Some people will do, they'll work for a company. They'll easily do 1,000 transactions, 1,000 appraisals.
Yeah. Can you review a $20 million home? Yeah, you just think of it like a $200,000 home and it all makes sense again.
Except for the view. It takes a little bit to get your head around that one, typically, on a $20 million.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Some things that matter a lot to a $200,000 home matter nothing to a $20 million home, and then vice versa.
That sense of adjustment to a whole different world. So you didn't stay at Goldman Sachs. You ended up eventually leaving the Wall Street world.
Well, they moved. They called a meeting one day and said, the start of the meeting said, if you're in this room, you have a job. You look around and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
a bunch of
people
people
aren't in the room.
not in the room. But you're fun. I said, the bad news is you're going to move to Texas.
Where were you at this time?
Oh, Florida. Sorry. I was in Tampa.
All right, that makes sense.
Yep. And loved it. You drove every day, drove over the Sunshine Skyway to get to work. It was actually St. Peter's.
St. Pete's is fantastic.
Oh, it was awesome. We were right downtown. We could walk to everything, restaurants, music, the bayfront, Tampa Bay. It was just amazing place to work and live. We had the what was it called?
Yes.
The Grand Prix? Is it Tampa Bay Grand Prix?
So.
Yeah. The race. Anyway, whatever. It went right below the windows of our office. So you could if you wanted to come in on a Saturday, you could sit there and just watch the race cars go by at 100 miles an hour. So that was the cool. Oh, and my desk looked into the stadium where the New York Yankees did their spring training, so we could watch all these games. Terribly distracting, but yeah. So anyway, they told us, well, you got two choices. You can take the severance package, or you can move to Texas. So I moved to Texas, and yeah, but by then the market was, there was no securitization, no loan trades, nothing happening. We did a couple of attempts at buying something, and they just all fell through. So we were just sitting idle. And so I put the word out to some friends of mine, actually some that didn't make the move to Texas. And I said, well, one of them said, oh, I work for this diligence firm, and they'd love me where you are. So they brought me on at Opus Capital Markets Consultants, or Opus. Yeah, they're still around. And so went up, interviewed, sounded interesting. They said, we want you to build a valuation department here. And 2 days into the job, they told me, we have this outsourced vendor, and Fannie Mae was 80% of their business. Said, Fannie does not like this vendor. If they know that you're replacing them, they will walk and will be dead in the water. If we don't replace them, Fannie Mae will cancel our contract, and we're pretty much out of business. Yeah, they said you have about 30 days before somebody, one or the other, figures this out, and it all goes wrong. So you got to build an appraisal department in 30 days. So we did, and right about the 30-day mark, the funny thing was, they didn't want this vendor to know that we were there. So we were it was in an industrial, and the front of the building had been converted to offices, but the back was still. So in the beginning, they put me back in the warehouse with like a card table, and then it was just me, and then card table with a laptop on it and an extra monitor. And we got one appraiser, then two, then four, and 8, and then we were all there. Well, one day, and we all had to go in and out the back door, and because they couldn't know. And so one day the vendor got wise to it, and they were upset. I think they were bluffing, but they said, that's it. Everybody get your stuff. We're out. And they walked out. And by then we had already been all set up. We knew the scope of the project. We're working on it, and everything worked out. I kind of knew we knew what they did, but we had figured out a way to do it better. And so we were just like, oh, so you're quitting. Good. See ya. They left, and we took over, and I think we were pretty successful with it. So we grew it from just Milwaukee to Milwaukee, Chicago, Fort Lauderdale, and Seattle. And one time we had over 100 appraisers working for us, and we were what would become a collateral underwriter. We did it with human brains instead of bots. So we did everything by hand. We re-underwrote or re-evaluated every single appraisal that they had. They would give us 5,000 loans. We had to get through that batch, and here's 5,000 appraisals to review. And kind of like I did for WAMU, you got to figure out if it's good or bad. And if it was bad, we had to write a letter back to the bank explaining why it was bad. But Fannie took all that research about what worked, what didn't work, things that were super important in an appraisal and not so important. And that was the basis of collateral underwriter.
Amazing.
So, and then that ended, and I went back to work for Goldman Sachs.
Oh, wow.
So I've been there twice.
Fascinating experience. Fascinating experience. I mean, it just goes to show, one of the things that we love about the about the podcast is there are so many different roles and responsibilities that are out there, and there's nothing wrong with any one role that anyone serves in. But we hope that through fun conversations like this and story time, that it opens up people's perspective of possibilities. Not that you need to go to Brazil and enter a new, BPO marketplace or head up and learn Canadian, because, it's similar and different. But nonetheless, there's so many opportunities out there. And having a background in valuation is such a powerful foundation for next steps.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I read a lot about appraisers, but I've heard it every 5 years since 1990. The business is done. They're replacing us. Like way back in the day when we first started doing electronic reports, people were saying, that's it, we're done. Once we start sending electronic, they can change our reports, and it's all going downhill from there. And then when the 2055 came out, they're like, oh, well, now it's a short form. They're gonna not pay us half as much. And every 5 years consistently, there's a new sky is falling. And so now when I hear the latest versions, they're like, oh, it's AI, they're going to replace us all. I don't think they're replacing appraisers. They're going, well, we are. It's one of the things I'm working on right now is what can we automate? What can we do to make the appraisal process easier and faster and more efficient? And do we really need people to run out and take pictures? Like there's cheaper people. There might be bots. There might be, a number of different ways maybe we can live without the photos. There's so many ways to crack that nut now that we didn't used to have, that maybe we don't need appraisers to do that anymore. But I think you're always going to have a place for a human being in it, because for one thing, I just can't imagine a day when, people still sue each other and go to court. I think if you go, and you go, I got a bot, and the other side says, I have an appraiser who's an expert in valuing real estate, I think the human being wins, at least for now.
Completely agree with you. I don't see any other way for that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And if you look at all these other things that we do, like our company, we just bought Real Info, which was one of the very early AVM companies. And we're, without giving too much away, we've got big plans for Real Info and what we can do with their data and what we can do with their algorithms and that kind of thing. We think that we can do a lot more, but we still need a human being for certain things. And we're not going to give a $20 million appraisal to a bot or any kind of algorithm. Yeah. You could have a manufactured home on 20 acres in the middle of the desert with all off grid. An algorithm isn't going to be able to handle that. A human being is creative enough that they'll be able to go, I think I can figure this out. Let me find a parallel situation. And, it won't be perfect, but I can come up with something. And, so and just simple things like interpreting things like, does this matter? Well, the algorithm is always going to go, peeling paint, it's garbage, or something like that. Whereas a human can look at it, and I think algorithms will get better, or AI will get better. But a human can look at it and go, you know what? Forget the peeling paint, exposed wiring. If you see wires sticking out of a wall, I think maybe eventually AI will catch up to humans, but it will flag it 100% of the time as exposed wiring. I see this all the time, and I'll go, you know what? That's speaker wires. We don't care.
Totally.
It's low voltage. It doesn't violate code. There's nothing wrong with that. Some guy just decided to run his speaker wires for his surround sound.
Exactly.
I think AI will get there eventually, but for the next few years at least, we need people to do those kind of things. And I mean, appraising isn't about identifying speaker wires. It's just that fundamental problem-solving skill of does this matter?
I think.
Yeah, I'm bullish on the on the business.
Really ties into the question we always love to ask is, what's your outlook? What are you looking forward to over the next 3 to 5 years?
Ooh, 3 to 5?
I know for someone like you, that any period of time. For other people, like, oh my gosh, 3 to 5. But like, you're much more closer to the forefront, as I would say, and why part of season 4 is an integral positioning for this podcast recording versus others. Because there's a lot more things happening, and this is really just the first segment of 2 that we'll actually record with you, Jeff, so that for people like with inquiring minds that want to know, we're going to have a little bit more as a bonus here soon.
Well, the business has been a sleeping giant. We've had so many things that we started. I sat in, I want to say it was 2007, maybe. It was before the crash. I sat in on a meeting in Washington, D.C. I don't even remember where, but Fannie and Freddie both had people there. And in 2007, they said, we are going to change appraisals. We're going to have a standard data set. We're going to have interactive forms so that you're not doing, all condos are exactly the same or all, whatever. And we're only just getting there now. That whole effort, we did get UCDP. We did get UAD. For people that don't know what those are,
they listen to enough of these right now. They should know it.
I hope so. But it's standardization. And I think those were good things. I mean, some may disagree, but it took us a long time from 2007. I think those were adopted in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So that was 5 years to get that. And even then, like, we're just beginning to get to that concept now. But I think the pandemic really pushed us over the edge, where we had to come up with all kinds of creative solutions because we might not be able to go out and inspect a property or stuff like that. So now we're there, and I don't think there's just no going back.
I agree.
We're past it. So I know that if you look up the timelines for UAD 2.0, it got pushed back. Like, it was supposed to happen this year. It is going to be 2025, and hopefully, if the GSEs get their way, that by the end of this year, so maybe fourth quarter, we'll start seeing it available for testing.
Well, that's helpful. And that's fascinating to see how that rolls out.
Oh, it's good, and I won't say bad because I want to be
Jeff,
positive.
Here's what's fascinating. It's good, and there's another side of the story, and that's why we're going to have a second segment so we can go into more detail. We know most people's listening preference runs right about an hour, and we have jam-packed an hour's worth of stories, and we're going to have the opportunity to have a second segment so we get to go into a little more detail, and it'll be the good and additional is what that'll all be about.
Sure. That'll be good. I think you're going to see UAD 2.0 roll out. We're going to see a lot more automation, a lot more empowered appraiser type initiatives. I think the business is going to dramatically change in the next 3 to 5 years. I don't think we're done at all. I just think everybody's going to have to up their game and become a lot more of a there's still art, but a lot more of a scientist and a lot more technologically enabled.
You summed it up well, and we kicked it off with Keith Wolf, and we're continuing on that same trend. So we look forward to part 2 of this conversation that'll be coming up pretty shortly. So, friends, as I mentioned, you definitely have something to comment and contribute in the chat. So please do that. Make sure to like this podcast, and more importantly, make sure to share it for coming attractions soon. We are actually building out an email list as well. I know there's one on LinkedIn, but I don't have the email address at the moment, so I apologize. But we'll have it coming forward so that you get first look at these additional insightful conversations with peers like Jeff. Jeff, I just want to say thank you again for a fantastic podcast session. I absolutely loved it.
Pleasure.
We're going to bring it to a close. Just hold on for a second. And until our next time together, friends, go out and, have a positive impact out there, no matter how you're feeling for the day. Because whether you realize it or not, you get to choose your feelings. Sometimes they choose you. Most of the time, you get to choose them.
Thank you for joining us in uncovering how technology is reshaping the landscape of real estate valuation and appraisal. Would you do a favor for someone you may never meet to influence a future that is worth building? Please scroll down and like this podcast and share your comments. Stay engaged with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platforms to catch every moment of innovation and expertise shared. Got an idea or a suggestion? Share your thoughts and questions with us. Let's continue to grow together embracing the tech evolution that is enhancing our industry's effectiveness and efficiency. Until next time, remember, in the fast-evolving world of real estate and technology, being a part of the change is what sets you apart. Keep creating the future by striving for excellence and innovation.